So in this theory, this critical race theory, isn't there at least one redeemable value about it? Isn't there at least something that's positive about it, something that is true or factual about it?
Okay, so my personal opinion, and again, this is my personal opinion. I'm literally not a professor, a PhD. I'm not a philosopher. I would argue going back to the roots of Marxism, right? So Marxism was able to capitalize on anger and envy and covetousness of the people who felt that they were being taken advantage of, and they wanted to sort of dismantle that power that was working against them. And because of that, I tend to just have a skepticism about anything that arises out of Marxism. Just simply stated. The reason being is that once you sort of attach that envy and anger and pull out of that, oh, Bo Diddley. Interesting. I'll have to look into that suggestion there. But when you, what was I talking about actually? I totally blanked out right now.
You were talking about Marxism and
right. So
the oppressor-oppressed narrative.
Right. So the oppressor-oppressed narrative, I have a lot of qualms with that because you produce an outlook on life that is very envious, and it removes your individual responsibility from situations. And I would understand it in an economic context. However, I can't quite say that as in a social context that we can apply Marxist thought, because then you automatically remove individual agency and you just say that you're kind of an automaton walking through a system, and then everything happens to you because of the boxes that you check off. You're a woman, you're black, you're queer, etc. I just believe it. The whole thing is based on a premise of oppression, oppressed and oppressor, or conflict theory, which as a Christian, there is a lot of contradictions biblically with that outlook. And so I don't believe that we needed critical race theory, or that we need it today to assess situations, just because philosophically it comes from a background that is very myopic in its outlook.
Okay, that makes sense. But isn't there some elements of oppression of other races in America by the dominant racial group?
So I would say, again, on an individual level, I would argue that people, and this is more of a psychological argument, people do tend to, hold on, let me read this. Right, so my argument would mainly be that it's up to individuals and individual agency. So if you're insecure, or if you maybe were hurt as a child, you will tend to kind of act in a manner that overcompensates for that deficiency of love. This is something that I actually get from Desmond Tutu. He speaks a lot about forgiveness. He has a book that says there's no future without forgiveness. And he talks about his encounters with the Africana apartheid police forces and all the political actors that were involved in the time. And he has a different approach to it because of what he went through dealing with overcoming apartheid and overthrowing the apartheid establishment. And again, it just comes down to the fact that we're all human. And sure, there is racism. There are people who look to their race for superior identity. They look to their sex to sort of, be dominant over other people. I don't believe that is an inherent trait. It might be a social pattern. It might be something that's influenced by peer pressure. It might just be a lie that people have believed. However, I don't believe it's just a permanent state of existence. I believe people can break out of it, as we have seen in the case of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. What they have done broke a lot of Afrikaners out of that mindset. And so I try to think about it in the American context. Critical race theory and critical social justice argues that white people are just inherently racist and there's nothing that they can do about it. Biblically, that is a contradiction because of, as my Christian belief would tell me, Jesus Christ died for all of our sins, and he can erase that from us. He can allow us to go through a process of sanctification and be cleansed of anything that makes us evil or cruel. Saying that we will always be, if it's not oppressed, and if you're a white person, that you'll always be the oppressor, is contradictory to that biblical pattern of redemption. So I just reject that. Yeah.
So if you are rejecting this theory on theological grounds, what about those who do not have your faith, who do not share your faith? How are you going to convince them over that there is no substance to critical race theory?
Yes, so here's the thing. Are you a human being and do you care about other human beings? So that's the first question. If you're an atheist and you're watching this, if you're agnostic and you're watching this, look at what has happened when we applied Marxist thinking and ideas into countries, into territories. There's always been an outcome of genocide because Marxism tends to remove the human element from the discussion of overcoming oppression. It just seems to be like if someone is inherently a certain group, say, for example, you are the kulaks, you're the kulaks, you're an oppressive class of farmers, then you have to just be eliminated because the problem is embedded in you. So there is a lack of value for the human life. And we have seen since we had what do you call it, socialism and Marxism implemented throughout the past 100 years or so, we've had 100 million people die because of the lack of value of human life. So if you don't even believe in God or any theistic philosophy, think about how much you cherish human life. And are you willing to take the risk of having another million or more lives lost because we keep running back to this ideology that tends to be very, very cruel and very inhumane?